Go fuck yourself, San Diego.
Nice fucking model!
I'm here to fucking amuse you.
Go fuck yourself.
You're gonna fuck my slutty little mouth.
What the fuck?
Fuck you!
Fuckity fuck fuck, Joe.
Every great movie has an edge. This is Movie F-Words, where we unpack all the language, the mayhem, and the moments that define swearing in cinema.
Welcome back to Movie F-Words, the podcast where we count the F-bombs, question the logic, and lovingly roast the movies we claim to adore. I'm your host, Paul, and with me today is Andy from Behind the Camera Podcast, and today's episode is all about realism versus reality. That magical Hollywood space where physics takes a personal day, emotions are perfectly scripted, and somehow nobody swears during life or death chaos unless the MPAA says they're allowed one. Why do movies work so hard to look real while absolutely refusing to sound real? Why do action heroes grunt through explosions but never mutter the very normal, "oh fuck," every time something real happens to them? And why do romantic leads have flawless arguments when the rest of us sound like malfunctioning Roombas? Today we're diving into the gap between how people actually behave and how movies pretend we behave, the realism we crave, the reality we ignore, and the profanity that should have been there all along. So, how do we personally define realism in movies as far as accuracy and believability, or even emotional truth? Andy, do you really see movies as realistic these days, aside from the usual comic book ones, but other than the ones that are portrayed as realistic? Do they come across as real to you?
Not as such. Sometimes they do. I think sometimes movies do try to be as true to life as possible, but like you said in the intro there is just so much that isn't real. There's a lot of profanity missing, and I kind of think that's one of the more relatable things, I think, with us as people, especially watching movies. When you watch a movie, you want it to be as relatable. You want to be able to imagine yourself in that. And if it just doesn't feel right, I mean, as much as, you know, not going as far as to say like fantasy movies where you can suspend your disbelief, but if it's like a normal, everyday kind of movie, you want there to be that kind of realism to it, where you can like look at yourself and be like, yeah, I can see myself in this, but it's just missing a few F-bombs or something.
Right. Yeah, I understand. Makes sense. Do you? So as far as for like the dialogue goes, do you think audiences really want realism, or do they want the illusion of realism? Do you think that movies just want to take people out of the day to day, or do they want to be seeing something that they don't normally experience, like mobster movies or courtroom dramas, things like that?
So I think it really depends on the type of viewer that you are of a movie, because I think there's a lot of people who will like, watch a movie and they won't really care so much about like little nuances like this, but at the same time, I know when I'm watching a movie, like for example, if I'm watching like a PG film, and it's missing so many different things, then I'm kind of just like, I find it hard to be like, you know, I get what the movie's trying to do, but at the same time, it doesn't feel real. That's just the type of viewer I am. But I think that, yeah, I mean, movies are ultimately an escape for a lot of people. They're entertainment. It can really take so many different forms, and enjoyment and things like that are so subjective that, of course, I think everybody's going to have like a different view on it. For me personally, you know, take like The Mask, for example, right? It is obviously it's a bit of it's a really strange movie, right? But imagine if that dropped a lot of F-bombs in. Imagine if that had a lot more coarse language. I think that could have been much better.
Yes. I actually agree with you on that. I feel like PG and PG-13 movies are just watered down versions of what the people involved with the movie actually want to express. You know, that's the language is toned down. Violence, not so much these days. I mean, you can have all kinds of violence in a PG-13, but you say fuck once and it's Like, all right, well, there goes your rating, and and the only thing with the PG-13 is you get 1, maybe 2, and it's not. That's not accurate, especially in action movies. Sometimes in dramas, it just doesn't feel real. The types of dialogue that they're having, and just I feel like the audience is cheated in a way.
Yeah, 100%. Like, and I think, I love the example of like the PG-13 movies. Well, our certification here in the UK is 12, but it's the same rule where I think you get 1 or 2. I've seen one that had 3 in it before, but it was the third Terminator movie, actually. And I kind of think now, I love the fact that there's like a bit of a meme surrounding the like 12 rated PG-13 movies, where it's like, if you could put it in a certain movie, where would you put it? But to go back to the example of Terminator 3, that's like a 90-minute movie, says it 3 times in like 2 different scenes. And it's kind of like, okay, cool. But there was a lot more room for it in the rest of the movie. So why just like kind of condense it down to these one little moments where the dialogue in like the kind of rest of the movie almost seems like a little bit obviously filtered. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It feels like the language has been cleaned up in a way, just so they can sort of target that rating. Because then I think their viewpoint is, if we make it PG-13, then the younger viewers can watch it and we can make more money off of it. But then you get things like Logan with Hugh Jackman, who worked really hard to make sure that he got an R rating in that movie. And there's a ton of swearing in that movie. And I think that the movie did excellent, as far as I know. And the same thing with Deadpool movies. Now you've got Hugh Jackman in Deadpool, which has a ton of swearing in it. And just the R rating, I think, says, all right, we let them do what they want to do and say what they want to say and get their quote unquote art out to the audience and see how they actually wanted it to be portrayed.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's interesting that you bring up the Marvel movies, because I think they're like the best example possible, because, comic book movies and comic books never really had that kind of level of swearing in it. And, that kind of keeps it true to that. And also it appeals to the younger audience, which now comic book movies, they're supposed to be for all ages, which is, a great thing. And obviously the results that they bear kind of show that. But I like the fact that they have just sort of started to peter it in a little bit. And then obviously with like Logan, Deadpool and all, it very kind of obviously sort of, shows that it's like, it's appealing to a different kind of side of the audience. And what I've noticed particularly with Marvel movies now is that like Guardians of the Galaxy 3, they there was the scene where her name actually, Nebula, is trying to open the car door, and Peter Quill's like, open the fucking door. And that was like that one F-bomb that they've dropped, like the first in like the MCU at the time. Right. And I could be wrong in saying that, unless you count Deadpool, I'm not sure the timeline, but they kind of did that for almost like for a kind of reaction, where it's like they kind of are aware of the facts, like, we can do this, and I think we can make these particular moments out of it. Like, if you want to call them viral moments, maybe, but it kind of works. It got people talking about the movie for that reason, the fact that they dropped that one fuck in that movie, and it potentially opens the door for like future Marvel movies where they can be like that are of the same rating, where they can be like, oh, okay, are they going to drop it once in this, and where are they going to do it? And it kind of keeps the mystique alive, I suppose.
So you're kind of anticipating that one line somewhere in the movie kind of thing. Is like, if it's PG-13, you go, all right, you get one specific fuck out of this whole movie. Where are you going to put it? And where, how impactful is it going to be, kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. And I see a lot of clips online about that as well. People are always saying like, right, take, I think it was with the cast of Lord of the Rings, And they were like, because a couple of those were rated where you could have had one. It's like, right, where would you put it? And like they had some incredible storyline or incredible sort of suggestions. But I do think that it ultimately does come down to the audience that they're trying to appeal to. And I think when it comes to like reboots and sequels of older franchises, I've noticed that they seem to kind of lower the rating of them down, because then there's like the nostalgia for the older generations who might want to kind of share that with like their kids or something like that, I guess. But I don't think in some aspects it has that kind of same effect like it should. I kind of think when you see a sequel, you kind of want it to be on par and not like watered down a bit. Like, I think to go back to Terminator 3 as an example, like 1 and 2 were the equivalent of an R rating, plenty of swearing in those. And then the third one, they kind of lowered it down a bit. And that was, God, that must have been 15 or so years after the second one. So there was that kind of generational gap almost. And I kind of think it plays into that, where they kind of wanted it to appeal to a new audience as well as the older.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just, it makes the scenes feel more authentic, I want to say, when they're swearing. I feel like they're speaking how they would want to speak in that specific scene. They don't try to sound polite. They don't try to sound nice to other. I got to say that my yardstick for dialogue in movies is Die Hard, because in that he swears, but he swears in moments that make sense. He talks the way a normal person would talk in that given situation, ignoring Die Hard 2 and the rest where he's a tough guy. But in the first one, it's just a normal guy set into a situation that is, well beyond his normal means. And he's angry. He gets scared. He gets fed up with things. He's fighting one of the terrorists, and he's, I'll break your fucking neck like your brother. And I thought that's how he would sound in that given situation. He wasn't polite. He didn't do the opposite and just say nothing at all. He sounded genuine. And it's those kinds of movies that I really like, because it feels realistic to me as an event that would actually happen. It makes me think, oh, Die Hard could actually exist here in this real world. So it's, makes it more believable.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. And I think a lot of it sometimes comes down to the actors involved as well. Like an example that I'm thinking of right now, Joe Pesci in Home Alone. Now, I know Home Alone, it's a family Christmas movie, right. And it's just like a little bit of a caper. But it's, and I don't get me wrong, Joe Pesci plays his role incredibly well in it. Like, but obviously it's so different to what people would have seen him in like the 80s and early 90s. Like, he would have like been not long off the back of Goodfellas when he did Home Alone. And the the fact that in Home Alone, and I would have loved this. But obviously Home Alone's a great movie as it is. But, just to hear at one point in the movie, Joe Pesci going, "You motherfucker," Macaulay Culkin. But obviously, given the nature of the movie, it just wasn't meant to be. And when it comes to things like that, I think it's like, you kind of think, yeah, okay, this is like okay to not be realistic, but I do ultimately think it comes down to like the nature of the movie as well. I mean, because God, like if Home Alone was rated anything other than what it was, it would be an entirely different thing, or could be an entirely different thing.
Yeah, it would. I love Home Alone. I watch it every Christmas season. So, but when I do watch it, and he's just muttering things, I think he wants to say something, but in the movie, there's nobody around him. So he's just muttering things to himself. It's like, why wouldn't you say what's truly on your mind in that situation when somebody just lit your head on fire, or you fell down a set of icy steps? it's not like Star Wars where I think, okay, I'm going to have to suspend my disbelief for things. There's spaceships and lasers, all kinds of stuff. So swearing, I can let it slide based on the situation. But when I'm watching other movies that should theoretically be quote unquote realistic, I think, yeah, he should be swearing up a storm when he fell off those steps rather than just muttering things. And he felt neutered in a way because of that.
100%. And Star Wars is an interesting example because that falls into the category of where you're allowed one or two F-bombs. And I kind of think had they had the wherewithal back in the prequel trilogy back like 25 years ago, they should have given it to Sam Jackson. Had they done it, they should have just given it to Sam Jackson.
Yes.
Just like,
we were expecting it, and there were so many moments where like, oh, here it comes, and nope, nothing.
And it would have been so out of pocket for a movie like that, where like it had the most like successful trilogy of its time back in the 70s and 80s to just completely, ruin it with something like that. But it would have just been phenomenal. Like,
do you think it would have ruined the movie if he did say it?
Well, from like a sort of hilarity standpoint, probably not, but from a credibility standpoint, maybe, because like take for instance in one of the prequel trilogy anyway, I think it's Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith, I'm not too sure, but whenever he has the lines like, you may be on this council but you're not a Jedi master or something like that, he says that to Anakin. You could have thrown a motherfucker in there somewhere and like just it would have, you hear it coming from Samuel L. Jackson and you just like, that just sounds normal. But yeah, like with a movie like Star Wars, like, I mean, there are movies that you kind of go in, you kind of have to sort of really suspend your disbelief and just be like, yeah, you know what you're expecting. And like, I think like in movies like that, the language of them is sort of I think it's the last thing you really think of when you go in to watch it. But on the other side of that, like whenever I was younger, I would have watched like a lot of like police procedural stuff on TV, like, like primetime, like CSI, Law and Order and stuff like that. And as Law and Order SVU particularly is the one that bugs me the most, because there is no way they're working those types of cases and that they are not going fucking mental in terms of what they're saying, especially to the perps and everything like that. Like, I mean, obviously they have like the sort of, PG language, like, oh, we got you, you bastard, you son of a bitch and all. But like, I mean, for how graphic and detailed some of the things in like SVU are, that's where like the kind of, that's where the parallel doesn't exist, where the language doesn't really match up to what is, being said. And like, I can tell you, I know people who like have worked with the police or had issues with the police, and they're not clean language, like they're not clean language type of people, and that's just because it's real. And I think things like primetime television like that really fall into that bracket. Definitely, I would say almost more than movies sometimes.
Yeah, I fully agree. And just the icing on the cake is that they've got iced tea in the show. And I was like, he doesn't swear at all, and you've got iced tea? It's not making any kind of sense to me. So, if the show was on Showtime or HBO, I feel like it would be like Oz or The Wire, way more realistic, because people love The Wire. They still talk about it to this day because it was so realistic. And then you get Criminal Minds, things like that on TV, where it's just these soul-crushing scenes of somebody getting sexually assaulted or killed or tortured, whatever it may be, but nobody's swearing. I was like, because my wife loves those kind of shows. She likes the crime shows, the investigation shows, but I've watched some of them and I think that's not how somebody talks or acts in that situation. They're clearly acting, and it's taking me out of the show, and it's in a way distracting. So I agree that things like Law and Order and stuff like that, they definitely need to express themselves more freely.
Oh yeah, definitely. And yeah, it is interesting because you have like I think it ultimately comes down to like the network, isn't it, that like sanctions these TV shows like HBO. They're with a lot of their shows, it's, you know, as they're what they should be, to be quite honest with you. You know, they really just sort of are, you know, in terms of the things that's happened in some of them, maybe not necessarily realistic, but at the same time, like how people are. And something that I'm like a firm believer in is when you're watching something that is about like real life, or like it could happen in real life, you want the characters that you're watching to be not only believable but in some way relatable. I think it's like just general storytelling. I mean, and yes, you can achieve that without swearing, but ultimately I think it comes down to like you know, like I said before, it comes down to the sort of type of show or movie that you're watching, where, you know, sometimes like the ratings as well, like, of a movie don't reflect it. Like you could have something that's like R-rated due to violence, but God forbid they would say fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like that takes it over the line. I don't know. I don't know how you were as a kid with being allowed to watch movies, but I was allowed to watch. I mean, back then it was a little different as far as what was on TV and in PG-13 movies, but you know, my parents would be, oh, they're saying fuck, we got to mute it here, but violence was okay to some extent. So I thought, why can't I hear these swear words, but I can watch someone get shot? I was never able to really get a straight answer out of them as far as why I was able to watch this but not hear that. Because even I had this Simpsons calendar, and in one of the pages, Bart Simpson says, "I'm Bart Simpson, who the hell are you?" And my mom blacked out the "who the hell are you" part. So it just says, "I'm Bart Simpson." But I knew what was in there. And I thought, Mom, I know what Bart is saying. You know, and this is the same thing as network TV where they bleep out the words or put in alternate words. We know what they're saying. Why can't you just let us hear it the way it was supposed to be heard?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think in that sort of situation, it comes down to repeatability, because, like, for example, if I was ever watching something like that with my parents, it's one of those things where I think parents have trust in their kids that they're not going to go and commit these acts of violence that they see in movies and TV and stuff, but they can be fairly confident that all these like swear words and colorful phrases and, well, I think creative choices of words are something that like you're 100% going to repeat. Like, because I know for a fact I did as a kid. 100% I did it as a kid. But yeah, I get what you mean, because whenever you see the things that are censored, it's like, you know, it kind of just makes you want to hear it a little bit more. You are more likely to kind of repeat it, especially like when you're younger. And, you know, it's actually funny because it reminds me of a few years ago. It's slightly off topic, but it's in the realm of censorship, so it'll make sense. But a few Christmases ago, I bought my younger brother 2001 by Dr. Dre on vinyl. You know, fantastic album. But I didn't know it was the censored version. So basically, it was like listening to an instrumental album. And it was like, what is the fucking point of this? Like, you know, it just made no sense. And then whenever you did hear the verses, it was so chopped up, and it was like, dude, like you can barely hear like anything that they're trying to fucking say, because it was so just, you know, censorship after censorship. And I mean, I get it's necessary.
Someone
at
earned
some
their
point,
pay
but-
for that.
Yeah. Oh, fucking right. Yeah.
Muting all those. Were they muted or were they beeped?
Muted. Yeah.
Muted. Yeah. That.
Yeah.
I had many years ago. I had bought a Blink 182 CD, and my girlfriend at the time was listening to it, and she goes, "Why are they saying all these things in this song?" And we come to find out she accidentally bought the censored version, so she had just instrumental songs on the CD. So when she listened to mine, it was the unedited one, and she goes, "Well, I never even heard any of these things." She wasn't offended; she was just surprised because she thought that was supposed to be an instrumental song, and it's like, no, there's tons of swearing and all kinds of things in there that you didn't hear. So it was quite an eye opener as far as how things are muted for people, because over here we've got Walmart, and at the time there was Kmart, who would not sell explicit music CDs. You could buy an R-rated movie, but you couldn't buy an explicit CD. It had to be the scrubbed version, just like your Dr. Dre one. And I never understood why I could go in there and get an R-rated movie, but I couldn't get a music CD that had the fuck in it. So it just baffles me sometimes when they selectively do the things like that. But we do end up with funny moments, like with Die Hard on network TV. Instead of Yippee-Ki-Yay, motherfucker, you get Yippee-Ki-Yay, Mr. Falcon. So,
yes,
you do get, occasionally you will get something positive out of it in terms of repeatability, because people will say Mr. Falcon more often than they'll say the motherfucker, just because it's funnier. So, but yeah, it's, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, but no, it's funny because that the Yippee-Ki-Yay Mr. Falcon, like, I didn't know that was the censored version of Yippee-Ki-Yay Motherfucker until it was parodied in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I don't know if you've watched that show before, but there's an episode where Danny DeVito says it, before like pulling his gun out. And I was like, that's really weird. But then that show didn't really say anything other than anything more than shit for, about like 12, 13 seasons. It was about 12 seasons or something like that. And I just thought, okay, maybe that was their way. But then I found out that was why, because of the network TV version of Die Hard. And another thing as well that you kind of get that's very similar to that is if you watch like a movie on Netflix that has an extended version, but now sometimes you'll find like with extended versions of movies that they will sometimes be the more watched ones, like the more ones you will see on like TV or like terrestrial TV and stuff like that. But on Netflix, they will always show like as close to the censored version as possible. Like I watched Dodgeball recently, and Dodgeball again, it's one of those ones. It's a funny movie, some great one-liners in it, especially from Rip Torn, but they have like the censored versions of some of his best ones, and it's kind of like, man, this is such a far cry from the movie that I really, really enjoyed when I was a lot younger. And I do think it's a kind of shame like that, but I get it, especially with a couple of lines in that movie. But it's a bit of a shame.
The network TV, I get why they do it, but at the same time, it's like, what's the point of doing this? I grew up in public schools. I heard this stuff before.
Yeah,
so
same.
One last question: which actor do you think delivers the most realistic profanity the best? Because there's definitely some out there who deliver lines better than others.
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't mentioned it before. Immediately my mind went to Joe Pesci. But I kind of think it would probably be in and around that sort of group of actors, like the ones who would frequently act in like Scorsese movies, for example, like Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, to name a few. They're definitely.
Have you seen Sopranos?
Yes, I've seen like half of it. I haven't finished watching, but like it's one of those things where it's been that far gone. You can't really watch it without already knowing
So if
what
you
happens.
watch it again, it's kind of like new again.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, it's like that kind of show where it feels realistic. Like this is what these people sound like in these situations.
100%. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Makes me feel comfortable when I hear people swearing up a storm as they go, you know what, this is how this person probably sounds in real life, and I want to hear how they sound in real life, not how somebody wants me to think they sound like.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely, yeah. Like, and that's something that I've always really been aware of as well. Like for watching TV, film, and everything, where it's like not the sense that I've always enjoyed hearing it. Maybe there's an element of that, but like very much a case where it's like, yeah, I kind of feel like it intrigues me a lot more, just because, and I think ultimately it is down to the realism of it.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, is the realism versus reality. How realistic is this movie supposed to be compared to, like you said, Lord of the Rings, where it's a fantasy. I got to take my mind out of where I am, put my mind into where Middle Earth is, and this is how Middle Earth sounds, and this is how deep space sounds in Star Wars, or this is how whoever it may be, that like superhero movies, because I know nobody can actually fly, so I got to take my mind out of it and say, okay, Superman's flying around, Batman's beating up people, so I just have to take my mind out of it. But yeah, it's based on shows and movies that are supposed to be realistic. It's the realism that makes it believable and makes it, I want to say, better, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, man. 100%.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So that wraps up our deep scholarly exploration of realism versus reality, a topic Hollywood clearly cares about as much as it cares about consistent physics, believable dialogue, or letting characters swear like actual humans. Truly groundbreaking stuff. If you learned something today, congratulations. You're officially overthinking movies with us. We just talked about why action heroes never say the F word while falling off buildings, and honestly, that feels like enough. So, again, today with me was Andy from Behind the Camera Podcast, and thank you again for listening to Movie F Words. We will see you next time.
MovieFwords.com